Stories are the things that we're learning from when we read God's word. Stories are the things that we share with our friends and our family. Today, I have an amazing woman who has made it her career and life's mission to helping everyday people to tell their story. I want to welcome Miss Amanda Johnson. Hi, my love.
Hello. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you for agreeing to be on this show. You know, the thing that intrigued me so much about you was that you were in the storytelling space and helping others to tell their stories by doing it for them. And you saw the opportunity into actually teaching them how to do it for themselves. So I want you to share in your own words, tell the audience a little bit more about the Story Oracle.
Yeah, thank you. I'm actually the a co-founder and CEO of Saved by Story Publishing, and here we help people who want to write and share their stories with the world, nonfiction, fiction, but really the goal and the mission of everyone who crosses our path, whether they are able to articulate it when they arrive or not, is to repair the world with story. And how does story repair the world? You know, well, think about all of the times that I'm sure there's at least a handful where you're sort of feeling stuck and lost. I know for me, in my 20s, I was sort of ahead of everyone else. I was married earlier. I had a baby earlier than everyone else. I had done a really good job of burning my bridges when I was in college, and so I felt so alone. And I felt like I was dealing with like big girl problems with no big girl mentors. And what do we do when we have that experience? Well, now maybe we're scrolling on Instagram, but 20 years ago, that wasn't a thing, right? And I went to the bookstore and I was looking for people who had similar stories, who had found themselves in similar circumstances, wanted to raise their children differently, wanted to figure out how to be, a good wife to a husband who was dealing with the challenges that mine was dealing with. Like, I needed help. And I turned to other people's stories. And the books that did not get me, grab me, help me at all were the ones that were written from an informational, knowledgeable sort of standpoint, right? They were just sort of clinical. I read this one parenting book by a clinical psychologist, and I got into 3 pages maybe, and I was like, she's not a mom. She's not a mom. She doesn't understand what happens inside of a woman's brain and mind when you have a child. And so I needed someone who had that wisdom, who survived it, who'd figured something out. They didn't have to be perfect, but in fact, I kind of wanted them to be a little messy about it, right? So that I
Right.
felt to say, well, shoot, I understand mess. Like I can be here in the mess and sort of figure it out with some help. And so as I got connected to my calling and started to work with individuals who were wanting to get their messages into the world and sharing their stories, guess who I found? A bunch of older women, people who were, 10, 20, 30 years. And I found a tribe that had so much experience, and I got to learn from them while I was helping them accomplish their goals. They were writing books in order to become, not just authors, but some of them wanted to build a coaching business or a speaking business, and they knew they needed to establish some credibility with their knowledge base and their story. And so here I got to help them do all of this, and I got to learn all of this amazing wisdom along the way. And that's really where my passion for this work is I love the books that we facilitate and produce. Like, they really are life changing. And my favorite part of this work are the moments that we get to spend in storytelling circles in our retreats and on Tuesdays when we gather. Because when we share our stories, they're like medicine to other people.
They
They
are. You
they
know,
give
I I'm curious though, because you have this amazing calling that is so much bigger than yourself. I want to take a step back and I want to know about your discovery of that being a calling and
Mm.
what were you doing before you got into this work?
Yeah. People don't go to school to do what I'm doing. That's for sure. And I sort of think about my calling journey like a pinball game. Like being bounced around, I didn't really know what was happening. It felt like a bunch of failures until I got into my first retreat. So I was going to be a journalist. I went to college to be a journalist. I was going to write like for a Christian magazine, I thought. But I miraculously got accepted into this honors program. It's a classic books program. And so instead of doing a lot of the normal undergrad work, we were studying the classics and we had to come with good questions and have big discussions. And it was harder work than I'd ever done in my entire life. I realized no one had really cultivated critical thinking in me. Our education system is very like information in, information out. I had a few good storytelling teachers who made an impact on me, but I couldn't think worth to save my life. So that was brutal. And by the end of my first semester, maybe first year, I was thinking, you know what? Like someone's got to go help these kids learn how to think before they get into college and are on their own trying to sort this stuff out. So I became a history teacher, learned how to design curriculum, learned how to manage classrooms, learned how to engage, right? Organize content. So I got into that system, but I also had a baby at the same time. And I was in one of the toughest districts, heavy gang activity, and they put 30 at-risk teens in my room, all the kids that nobody wanted. And so, and then when I asked for support, how do you do sliding scale for these kids? You know, because I'm like connecting with them on story, and I'm working it. And my partner teacher was like, just go to the doctor and get an antidepressant. And I'm in the wrong place. I'm going to come back to that later. Like I'm going to come back. And so, because I didn't have anything left for my kid at the end of the day, and he was more important for my responsibility. And so I left. I got an opportunity to do online writing instruction with a friend of the family who was building this amazing course. We were getting such great results. And of course, I'm in her training company, learning how to, design curriculum for online writing, coaching, back and forth. and and we went to a bunch of entrepreneurs to share the word. Like business is amazing. We started networking, and the female entrepreneurs we met up with were like, we don't really want to learn how to write well. That's cool and stuff, but we need you to fix what we've been writing. We have blogs, we have articles, we have websites, like it's not working. So I opened this little editing business, and that's where I started to see like, okay, like these people are so smart and they're achieving so much, but they don't really have the ability to see how they're doing what they're doing. They need a witness. And so I started to help them and started to figure out the importance of story. In the background, one of my first projects I worked on, this editing project, was with my mentor. And she said, it feels really good to write a book. When are you going to write yours? Now, I'm thinking, I'm 27. I know I look really successful, graduated, top of my class, graduated honors program, like beautiful little son growing, but like I'm a hot mess inside and nobody knows. The story that people saw from the outside was not the story that I was experiencing on the inside. Too many starts and stops, too many failures, too many things not working out. And so I actually just started crying. I gave her a hug and I left. But she said, there's something of value that you have to give right now. Because of course, I said to her what people say all the time when someone tells me to tell their story. Well, maybe I'll write a book after I get another certification or another degree, right? I'll be smarter. Or after I get over this problem, or when it's a better, it's like, I'm not enough is really what it boiled down to. And she said, no, you have something of value to give today. What is it? And I just got in my car, started crying. And I was asking myself that question all the way home. 27, I felt like I had no connection to my purpose. And I'd had moments of really feeling it, like really thinking that the next thing was the thing. And I had this moment where driving home and I remembered something that had happened within the last few weeks with my son. And I realized that what I was doing with him, the way that I was cultivating his self-image with messaging, I was really careful with my words. I was really careful about, not, your worth is not your worth is not your behavior, right? Let's separate those, because that had been an accidental situation in my life. And so one day he got in really big trouble with grandma because he broke her mirror and she screamed, "You're such a bad boy." And I was running down the hallway to do something to her. I don't know what I was going to do, but Mommy Tiger was on the way. And I got to the end of the hallway and I saw him with his hands on his hips, like Superman position, looking up at her. And he's like, "I'm not bad. I made a bad choice and I'm sorry." And I thought, he was done. Like, it worked. He was like 3.5. And so I had this moment while I was driving home, like, well, that's valuable. By the time I got home, it was super scary, mascara all over my face. I told my husband I need a few minutes because I don't know what's happening. I ran upstairs and I started writing all of these things: a training company, a best-selling book series for children and parents, working with a teacher from The Secret. Like, I listed things that I didn't even know the definitions of these things, but I was writing them out. And 3 months later, one of those teachers from The Secret walked into my life and invited me into a program where I learned how to tell stories and facilitate transformation. And then when I eventually got into retreat mode with my own clients, because I had to kidnap them to get work done, when the tears started flowing, and I realized, oh, this isn't exactly, I mean, the books get done, but really this is about helping people with the voice. What God's voice told me was, this is not just about helping their message stay true to intention. This is about helping them to go back to who they were before the story began, before the trauma. Remember who you are. And if you help them to walk back in the timeline and write through it, they'll get there. And so that's been the adventure, is being able to walk alongside people as they go back and feel and process and cry and celebrate and wonder at the grace that is in their story that they didn't see. So yeah, that's my pinball career journey.
But you know what though? It's so true. Like that. So God has always been in my life, but when it came to reading God's word, I had this understanding of the Bible being this book about perfect people and how you're supposed to live this perfect life. And it just felt like this very heavy thing. And it wasn't until I read it cover to cover, because I realized I had a lot of opinions about a book I've never actually read. So I was like, okay, before you think anything else good or bad about anything, how about we do that? Because where else do you do that, right? Like, you want to know about something, you at least do the research in it. And when I read it, I remember being stuck for a second, because what I thought God's word was and what it actually was were night and day. I realized that it was a book of stories, not just stories, but stories of broken people. And I mean, broken in some pretty crazy way. Like, even the people that we hear about on Sunday were far from perfection, very, very, very far from perfection. And there was something so healing in that. Like, in me realizing that I was holding myself to an unfair standard that nobody asked me to hold myself up to. Like, I did that to myself. And I learned so much from those stories and seeing so much of myself in those stories, and being able to tie it back to things that I had experienced in life. So you're 1000% right about, like, it's the broken place that there's so many lessons that you're able to gain, and even more so when you're able to see the hindsight of it all. I know for me, if I could go back and have conversations with 20-year-old Shay, I would definitely make her have several seats. Um, there is several seats, because mindset wise, the way that I thought then of independent woman versus the woman that I am now, who is wholly reliant on God, night and day, completely and totally night and day. Now, when you read God's word, there are stories, yes, but in each book, and even within the chapters of the book, there's a difference in technique and the way that the story is told. So I would like for us to have a conversation and talk a bit more about that, and how a person who wants to tell their story, how do they get started? What do you recommend to clients?
Well, I think the first piece is clarity. I talked to a woman yesterday who said that she's been prophesied over as writing several books. And she was like, about what? About the story about. And so she's in the process of trying to figure that out. What's the vision? Because I have seen it, and we were talking about this before we hit record. I've seen a lot of individuals come with really big dreams for what the book is going to help them do. I'm going to get on the Women's Christian Conference speaker circuit, and I'm going to change the world with my book and my message. And like by the end of the writing, the pain that drove her to write her story and created so much pain for her life was processed. And instead of hitting the speaker circuit, she went back to being an associate pastor that she swore she would never become again. Like, too much church hurt. I'm just not going back. And so here she is, living that life. Some people come with that. They're like, I'm going to do this, and then it's going to turn into this and this. And so those are sort of easier to figure out the clarity. Some people come and they're like, I know I just have to tell this story. I promise God. Okay, let's map it out to tell the story. Do you see anything else? No. But I sort of have a hunch that there will be something else. They'll be speaking or coaching or something. So I help them to build the book in order to make that possible on the other side. But a lot of people are just like, I just know I need to write a book. I've wanted to write a book since I was little. About what? I don't know. People tell me I need to write a book about what? I don't know. I guess my story. So first thing is clarity. Why? And there are a few tricks for this. Obviously, take it to God in prayer. Like, what's the bigger vision that you have for my life? Because the book it's the beginning of something. It's the end of something. Usually it's the end of having your story define you, because you get to see it differently, because you get to process it all and let go of all of the hurt, and you get to close that last chapter and really start writing as a co-author in your story for the future. But it's usually the beginning of something else, some sort of ministry, paid, unpaid, something. You're going to discover something while you're writing that you're going to be like, well, everyone needs to know this. So it might be that you take it back to your nursing profession, or it might be that God calls you to stages. But what does that vision look like? And I always tell people, think about all the dreams that you've had in the past. You just heard my pinball journey, right? So think about my calling. I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. Well, I'm be a journalist, writer, writing skill. I'm going to be a teacher, content development, critical thinking, persuasion, right? Classroom management, behavior management. Okay. That's not working out. I'm going to go become a writing instructor. So then I learned how to do writing instruction online instead of just editing, like show people how to be better. And then editing. So now I'm editing huge chunks of content, putting that together, developing that skill. And then I get invited into facilitation certification, where I learn how to use story to connect with other people and make us all realize that we're all humans with the same feelings and different facts. And the faster we get over the facts and get to the feelings, the faster we all heal and repair.
I
The
love
end.
that.
Right. And so here I am in this retreat thinking, well, this is just about stories and blah, blah, blah. And then the room falls apart and people are bawling. And I'm like, oh, that's what I was doing. The hints are in all the previous dreams. We think that those are lost forever, like old ground, old altars. Like, go back to the altars, the things that really inspired you, that got you excited, and look at all of them at one time and go, if I were a master co-author, how would I tie all of these things together for a happy ending? How would that look? And one of my clients, in the first few years, he gave me really a really powerful way to think about this, because he was very clear when he got to me that he was going to write this book, and we mapped it all out. And then he called me and he told me that he had cancer and he was going to go beat the cancer. And then he was going to come back and write the book. And I was like, okay. So years go by and I'm sort of hearing about his journey, talking to him every once in a while, but hearing through the network that he's like, he's better. He's in remission. I'm thinking I'm going to hear from him soon. And so, meanwhile, I'm like, okay, I'm the cobbler without any shoes. I'm going to write my own book. So I put together this entire crazy plan to write my book in 6 months and launch it with this 2 huge events because one isn't enough. And so he sees all my stuff come and he writes me back and he's like, this is so cool. Also, I need your help with the book and I need it kind of fast. And he told me that it had come back and the doctors had given him 30 days. And so I got to walk alongside this man who, at the end of his life, with 30 days left, he knew that there were 3 things he had to do. 1, marry his wife in a church or she was going to kick his dead body, is what he told me. 2, turn over his business to someone else, which he knew how to do. That's the core of what his message was about. But the 3rd thing was, why would I take all of this with me? Like, it would be such a shame to not leave this behind for other people. And I remember just daily working with him, working on this crazy project and just thinking in the back of my mind how clarifying it was to have a 30-day plan. Like, what if we operated, if I only had 30 days left? This is the clarity. If I only had 30 days left, what would I say? What would I leave?
Wow. That's so sobering.
Sobering. And from then on, it's just like, I think in 30-day grids, well, if I only had 30 days left, what's the highest and best use of what's in here? How do I get it out? How do I perpetuate it infuse it into the lives of my clients? How do I make sure that it's the thing that I want left behind?
That's like a whole life lesson though, right there. Honestly, like what you just said, like realistically, all these things that we're building, whether it be with our business, our profession, just all the things that, like, I don't know about the rest of y'all watching, but the way my to-do list is set up, it's like the never ending journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that thing is we never get to zero. Somehow at the end of the day, that list is always longer than when it started in the very beginning. And that used to contribute so much to my anxiety, like you would not believe. And it wasn't until I started embodying what you just said, like realistically, if like today, I had to break it down to today because the way my anxiety is set up, I can't even think 30 days ahead. It was just like, if today was my last day, right? What am I okay with not getting done? What's most important? And because I realized I had developed a habit of putting off what truly was most important, right? I can't pick up this friend's call because I'm doing work right now. And I'll call you when I'm done with work, but work is never done. Again, it's that never ending journey. And I started to reprioritize everything and put those conversations first and foremost, so that if a friend needs me or a family member needs me, I can be there, because if I were to die in that moment, I would be happy. I would be satisfied, and I would not have any regrets. I know that I would have regrets if I died in the middle of doing a marketing plan or presentation and know that that call came through and it was probably somebody that needed help, but I was doing the thing. So I'm so glad that you shared that, because it's really an unfortunate thing, but a lot of times people don't get that just awakening until they're at death's door, right? Until it almost seems like it's too late. And I think that's an amazing reminder that you shared. Now, how did that impact your business as far as like the timeline and story production? Did it give birth to a new product?
Well, he finished his project. I finished mine. I had 3 weeks. He died at the end of November, and then holidays and grief. And so I looked up at the end of December and thought, wow, if I'm doing my math right, I said to everyone, they were already registered for March 3rd. So in order to get everything produced, I have to write this thing in 3 weeks. And so I don't recommend that, but I was able to do it because I've been helping other people do it. So what do you need? You need clarity about your message, and you need clarity about who you're writing to. And then you need structure. You need to know where all the stories go, where all the lessons get pulled out, what resources you're putting, and how it's all going to flow together. Or else you're going to be figuring that out as you go, and you're going to be finding rabbit trails, and then you're going to give up and close the thing and come back to it next year, next New Year's resolution. That's just how that goes. So you need structure for the content, but you also need structure for your life. So when I said I have to do this in 3 weeks, I had to tell my family, I had to sit down that night over dinner. I was like, okay, guys, look, I have to do this insane thing. And I know that I can, but I also know that I can't do it if I have to also do all of these things. And so what I did was I asked them to be me at home for 3 weeks. Laundry, dishes, all the things that I was responsible for. Could you please help me with these things for 3 weeks? Yes, we'd love to. Oh, great. I also want to make sure that I stay connected to you and you don't hate me or this project when it's over. Okay, how do we do that? Well, I'm going to need breaks. So if what are your non-negotiables? My husband said I need a date night at least once a week. Easy, done. Let's do that. My son said I want to go to Disneyland every week because we had just gotten paid. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're like, that's crazy. But it was so good for me. It was so good for me to take a full day off and go to Disneyland once a week.
Wait, you guys did it?
We did it. And the book still got done in 3 weeks because they literally took care of everything else. And the coolest part about this, that structure around your personal life and inviting other people to help you with the goal in a way that is like they get the opportunity to sort of own that. At my launch, my son took total ownership of that book. He was like, yep, I helped her make that happen. I was like, it was glorious because think about this dynamic that usually happens, even in entrepreneurship, right? You're working on this project, you're like super excited, and you're like, I'm so sorry, but I have to take 15 minutes, or I have to take 30 minutes, and you're like stealing a little bit of time from everybody, right? And it's very hard for them to know why that's more important than this right now.
Yeah.
They're not in your mind, they're not in your heart. They haven't heard God's voice say, you have to do this right now. Like you have 6 months to get this thing off the ground. And so having that lens of inviting my people in and saying, I need help with this because it's this important. This is what I think it's going to help me accomplish. It's a part of my calling, fill in the blank. And then they got to be part of that. They didn't care at all about doing the dishes or they were so excited to help. And so you need that structure around the personal, or else it creates funky dynamics around the projects that you're working on for work or especially books, because books tend to take longer. And it's also important that you have structure around the time, because like in our program, we realized that high performing, highly obligated people, first of all, we can't get them into the writing without kidnapping them with consent into retreat, because they're just always, being pulled by this thing, right? Like, oh, this person needs me. Oh, there's something happening at work. Oh, I'll come back to it tomorrow. And tomorrow never comes. And so I was like, let's get into retreat. And if I can get someone to write one chapter in a retreat in a few days, they're like, oh, I don't have to do it all by myself. I don't have to
builds
get it.
that momentum too.
That little high performer in their brain goes, I could actually high perform this because I have someone partnering with me to make sure it gets done right? To make sure my ideas are solid, to make sure there are no holes or gaps, to make sure that the story
Out of that silo too of their own thought process that a lot of times gives into perfectionism, imposter syndrome, just all the things. Being able to bounce it off another human, I'm sure helps.
Don't be alone with yourself in your story. Don't be alone, especially in your story. Always take allies in. And that's that piece. We have time so that you can tell that little brain of yours that's like, you have to be working on this and you have to, I have 3 days. I've mapped out for you over here. And you get Tuesdays and these 3 days every month. You're fine. I'm going to focus on this. I'm going to take some notes and then we're going to get back to it. And that rhythm is so good for creativity because you do these hard pushes where you just put it all out there and then your mind goes, "Whew," and then it starts populating for the next thing and all these creative ideas go through and you just take notes and you get ready for the next one and that's all mapped out already and then you pop in. So figure out the structure and the rhythm that works for you. I am a write a book in 3 to 6 weeks girl. You will not find me trying to do this over a year. It's just not going to be it's not the way that I do anything. So, figure out how you succeed and then build a structure around that and invite the people around you to hold you accountable.
Let's build a team on AI because the world has gotten into this culture of like using AI, and granted, I am a fan of it, right? But it should be used as a tool and not as a replacement of the human, is my perception of it. So, as a professional storyteller, what are your views on AI and where it fits into the storytelling process?
Okay, I'm going to give you a few stories that answer this. The first one is I received an email from a document from one of my clients a few weeks ago, and she was writing, like, I think for a grant or a program or something, and they asked her to tell so many stories and answer these questions. So she sent it to me and I read it and I cried. And I wrote her back and I said, "Look, this is really beautiful. Like, it made me cry. Um, Also, I know that it was written with AI. And if you were just going to be a writer, I would say your choice, but you're going to be a speaker. You are a speaker. And you're not just a speaker, you are a highly energetic, off the cuff, super messy performance speaker. The opposite of what you just did in this storytelling with AI. And so there's this thing about congruence, right? That you really have to think of. If you're planning on doing anything on the other side of writing, you need it to be congruent. You need your voice that everyone sees on the page to be the voice that they hear in a podcast, on a stage, in other places, or else you create distrust and they will stop listening, no matter how catchy your stupid AI is. That's how I feel about it. And then, you also have the piece of embodiment. So there's this thing that happens when you go back through your stories and you get the opportunity to reclaim parts of your voice and parts of your soul and parts of all of these pieces of you that you've left at 3 years old and 7 years old and 20 years old. And they just got like stuck there. And the process of writing and going back to them, if you ask AI to do that, one, you're probably going to leave out those moments because who wants that to go into a project? And two, if you manage to include the moments, they're going to come out really nice and polished instead of what really happens. Go back through those stories and not just the stories, but all of the beliefs, all the internal dialogue and head trash that gets stuck in that part of the narrative, all of the things that happen inside the body, all of the trauma that gets stuck in this part or that part or this organ. Guess what? It's like writing through that stuff actually moves it out of your body. Wrestling with it in storytelling circles and having moments where you think, man, if someone heard me tell this story, like, I don't think anyone would stay in the room. Like, this is why people don't tell their stories, right? Because they told their story once because they were really excited or they really needed some help. And what happened? They got shamed, they got shushed, they got gaslit, fill in the blank, all the different things that happen. Your feelings don't matter, you're too much. Yeah. And so we tell people all the time, go write your book and tell your story on stages and pages. And they're not doing it. Why? Because there's a lot of old trauma around telling our stories.
No, it's true. It really is true. I remember the first time that I went to a therapist back in college, and I remember just telling her like a piece of my story. And I'll never forget this. That lady should be fired, by the way. Her response was, "How are you still standing?" And in that moment, I was just like, "Well, girl, I don't know. That's why I came to you." So apparently you're just as lost as me. But I'm still standing. So I guess I figured out more than you. And I was just done. I was just completely done in that moment. So there is a lot of weight that we carry from how other people react to those micro moments when we try to share something. And I love that you're creating a safe place
Yeah.
for that story to be, in a lot of cases, retold, but in a protected environment. And I would like to know what advice you have for a person who has maybe thought about telling their story, but because of some of the same reasons we just discussed, they kind of withdrew back in themselves and have talked themselves out of it.
So, this is the most important thing. When I'm talking about structure, I'm talking about when I talk about like structure for the content, you're thinking structure for like that's safety for your mind, right? You're telling your mental self, like, here are the lines. Like, we're only telling these stories and these lessons here, and then we're moving to this. And so it makes your mind go, oh, okay, then I can just do that. I don't have to like follow this or add this at the last minute. I can just do this, relief. And then when you do that with your personal life and you ask everyone to sort of help you accomplish this goal, and this is what I need, same thing, safety, right? Because now you don't feel like you're stealing or having to, negotiate all the time. You set that up for yourself. Now, there might be some micro negotiations that have to happen in the content and with the people as you go. But generally speaking, you've created a lot of safety for yourself. And the same is true for the storytelling. Um, a lot of people come after years of therapy, group therapy, recovery, storytelling, and, personal clinical therapy that they've done, lots of different personal development programs. And the one thing that I think hasn't happened is that there's this combination that happens when you're able to write and get clarity on what the actual emotions are. So part of it is getting so deep, and this is the thing that AI knows how to do because it's coded for this, right? It like touches all of those little neurotransmitters in you and you're like, oh, a story. Well, the way that you do it as a human is you go back to those moments and you go, okay, what was that? What was that room like? I have to describe the room. Well, it was right. And then what was I thinking about? Well,
Mhm.
right before she walked in, I was thinking, here's the internal dialogue. Here's what was I feeling in my body? Ooh, I don't want to do that. I was feeling terrible. I don't want to talk about that. I don't
Yeah.
want to. That is where the gold is. Go do
Yeah.
that. Survive it once, you'll survive it again. And you'll survive it again faster if you write it out and then you share it with someone. It's like purging it out, having it witnessed, and then like letting it go into a storytelling campfire.
Yeah, and you know what? One thing that I started doing that helped out a lot for me was doing video diaries of
Mm.
like moments like that. And it's something about like talking on camera, and it's almost like you're talking to a person, which is you, and being able to just let the emotions happen. Like whatever you see, you feel, you smell, just talk through it. Don't worry about structure. Don't worry about even necessarily the clarity. It's about capturing the emotions of it. And the plus side is we have technology now where you can then pull that transcript of that moment and the words that were used to, refer to later um, to ensure that you're doing the memory justice as much as possible. Because I know for me, sometimes even the writing out, I try to write perfectly, right? Like, so a lot of the emotions and things get left out. And that was the thing that helped me out tremendously, was just like, and the time part too of it. Because if I have to set aside time for me to sit there and be emotionally available for writing, that it ends up on the bottom of the never ending text.
And you're just
Yes,
never getting to it. Yeah, and
never getting to it.
that is one of the especially for people who are a little bit like me and probably you, there is something around time because, in our world, time is money, time is like, it is our currency. Time is our real
Yeah.
currency. And so there's something really cool about, I use the metaphor of the butterfly. I've always used it, upside down messengers about that, the process of like the magic eggs and realizing that like this, I have a blueprint. Like I'm here to unfold into something specific. There's a soul DNA blueprint. And then like you sort of get excited about that and you're in caterpillar phase and you're grabbing all of this information and knowledge and resources and a lot of activity. But then there's this moment where the caterpillar goes upside down. And caterpillars do this like so naturally. I got to watch this with my son when he was 3. And I just remember I literally heard God say, and you resist. Like, that's true.
Because how uncomfortable is that if you think about for a caterpillar?
Scary. It is so scary because you do all of this and then you hit a wall of some sort. You hit the realization, and it's usually not mental. It usually happens viscerally or in a mental shutdown where you're just like, wow, I can't write anymore. I can't, I'm stuck.
Yeah.
And it's because something collided. You collided into a part of your story, an emotion, a truth that has been your truth for a long time. And your soul's like, see, I told you that wasn't working out for us.
Yeah.
And the only way to get through that is to create that safety and write and speak and write and speak and have it witnessed, because there's just, again, don't be alone with yourself. So the cocoon, it takes all this time, right? I mean, like my son eating, he was like, years old, walking around the bungalow, protecting it, just waiting. It takes so long. And that's sort of how I feel about the creative process. You don't really get to decide how long that transformation is going to take. I'm in the middle of one that's like 3.5 years long, and I'm so tired of it. I'm like, where are these wings? I know there are wings at the end of this, and I'm going to be out of this thing eventually. You don't get to decide how long that takes. But when you're writing a book and you're trying to get to clarity, you can do the opposite with time. You can say, I'm giving myself 20 minutes to answer an impossible question. And
you guys listen to what she's saying right now, because this is like the golden ticket to productivity and really getting stuff done. So say that for one more time, just in case they missed it.
An example of this, I do this we have virtual campfires every 2 months. And I tell people this all the time. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to write your answer to an impossible question. You're literally your brain is going to go, huh? Like, how can I do that? I don't care. I stop thinking about it. Just write. Just hear what your soul is going to say to you in 5 minutes. And you don't have time to edit. You don't have time to perfect. You don't have time to think about and wrestle with. You only have time to purge. And when you do that, and then you get the opportunity to read it back, holy crap, the stuff that you had told yourself is next level. And if you have the courage, because you've created some safety around you with people, to say, you will not believe the thing that came up while I was doing this today.
Yeah. It's amazing, because I've experienced that too, where it's like I'm trying to write a thing and I've been trying to write the thing for like 2 weeks for get the thing done. But then with the second that I commit to, you got 1 hour. When I start this timer, when I end this timer, whatever gets done is what gets done. And all of a sudden, this thing that is taking me a full 14 days 14 days is now all of a sudden done, and not even just done, but done well. Like all those mental blocks where I was trying to figure out like which way to attack the conversation or the perception, like how do I do this thing, just melt away, just totally melt away, because it got real and there's a timer. So I love that advice.
And there's also something, and I'll say this for some of the people who are probably listening and thinking like, oh man, I've been doing this for 6 months. This is not the reason why I will only write in 3 to 6 weeks and with a public deadline, because I just won't do this stuff like for myself. There are other more important things that I would rather be doing. So
Yes.
I have to do public deadline. I have to tell the people I'm going to produce it by then.
Yes.
I will get it done. And
That's
there's
why communities and coaching is so effective, because it's so easy to lie to us. Like, I already know my excuses. I know how life was lifing over the last week. I know all of the reasons why this didn't get done, and they're all justified. They're all sound. They're all like A1 excuses.
yeah,
But the second that you kind of verbalize that you're going to do this thing to a coach or as a part of your community, now it becomes real. Like,
yeah,
now you don't want to be like, I used to do accountability sessions, and my favorite accountability, well, not used to, I do them to this day, but my favorite accountability sessions was always meeting with my sister weekly, because we're both in entrepreneurship. And one thing I was not going to do is show up to a weekly meeting and I didn't do anything for the business. Like, it's one thing doing stuff for clients, but I didn't do anything for me, myself, and my business. Like, I'm not going to be that one on the call. And it's true. It's true. It's human nature. We do need that motivation for sure.
And when you're doing it around story, there will be moments where you're going to think like, oh, this part of the story isn't important, or I don't really want to share that because of all of these reasons. And the opportunity to be in storytelling circles around this is that the other people who are around you are probably representative of your market, or
Yeah.
were at some point in your life, in their lives. And so they will tell you, oh no, oh no, 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 no. That has to go in there. I'm sorry. Like,
I
go
love
write that
that.
right now. Go write that right now. That, why did you leave out this thing? You talked about this in circle and it's not here. Why isn't it here? Well, I didn't think, go write it, add it, right? It's like, it's it's the opportunity for other people to tell you the parts of your story that are important, because your ego will try to talk you out of those things because it's so vulnerable and scary. And so if you have people around you who are like, no, that's where the gold is, then by the time you're done writing the book, you're looking at those parts of your story as gold. So it's not, like, ooh, you still feel it when you're going through publishing. I'm still like, ooh, this is going to be in print forever. We watch people go through that, but it's not the same because they have the people around them who are like, these were the most important details. Or they'll do the reverse. Like, you went, I'm so glad you wrote that because I bet that was really healing, but you don't need this detail or this detail or this detail.
Mm.
Right? Or, that one's going to get you into unnecessary trouble. Let's adjust this a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? But you have more eyes and hearts and ears on the process. And that is really the, like, time, right? Just create time for that. And I know it's really scary, but if you put yourself in a position and you just, give yourself permission to experience it, the minute you do, I mean, the first room that I went into and they gave me sentence, question prompts and sentence stem prompts. And I was like, if you really knew me, like, with a perfect stranger, this lady's going to get up and run out of the room. And she sat there and leaned in, healing. Like, there's so much opportunity for repair happening in the story, repair happening in our souls, repair happening between us. Because when you get that courage and you take that chance, you open up the opportunity for everyone else to understand how powerful that is. If it was powerful for them to do that for you, then the idea of being able to do that for other people is like, well, of course I'm going to try to get over all of my, you know, fears and nerves about this, and I'm just going to go do it because I know what
Yes.
happens when people do this. But you don't know until you put yourself in there and get the experience. And that's the thing. Back to the conversation about AI, that's what's missing from the whole thing. Like, AI sort of pretends to be that, but it can never be that. It can't look at you and go, well, that was great. Also, there was this thing that happened with your face when you were talking about this part. So can we go a little bit deeper into that part?
Yeah.
And then you dig in and you realize, oh, that thing that was happening in your face was that you were lying to yourself. Like, and you almost just put that in a book with AI. Oops.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
need you need this to get
Yeah.
real.
I
And it,
love that. I love that. Today has been a day, a conversation of so much knowledge and wisdom passed on to help others really start to share their testimony in a very real way. But you not only have the knowledge in your head, I know you've put together quite a few resources for people. Tell them a little bit more about that and what you've created with your quest starter.
yeah. So if you go to the website, savedbystory.house, there are these things called quest starters. So we find, we say we partner with people from inspiration to impact. That means that some people come with like, I know I'm supposed to write and I don't know what about. Well, great. Go check out the thing that's like, it'll give you some clarity, 10 questions to clarity. Or some people, like this woman that we met a few weeks ago, she had done this amazing job with this book, but didn't have a brand. And she was going to a global stage. And she was like, I'm hearing things about like, I need a brand and a platform, help me out. And so go check that out, learn what that's about, and then ask for help to build the thing that you need to get where you want to go. Publishing, some people are so confused about publishing because girl, it's a racket out there. It really is. It's the one reason we decided to turn this into a publishing house too, because too many people being taken advantage of. And so that if there's one resource that you get out of that quest starter, do the publishing thing if you're thinking about becoming a published author, because it will help you clarify what your priorities are and be really, really clear no matter which pathway you choose. It'll help you to understand what's most important to you so that you don't accidentally lose that or sacrifice it along the way.
Okay. I
Yeah.
love that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your brand, for sharing your heart, for sharing your spirit. I myself am recommitted to the assignment of sharing my testimony. You've written a book, right? And it's again on the bottom of that never ending list. You just moved it to the very tippy top. So I will be getting on your nerves and giving you some calls about that. To all of you watching, you guys know that I'm LaShay LaRue, your host for this season of Growth. And thank you so much for joining us on Entrepreneurship Now. Until next time, bye, my cherished loves.